Hi, I'm delighted to be here with Dr. Martin Patrick. Great to see you.
How do you do?
Very, very well. Lots of titles.
Yeah.
Doctor, playwright, dramatist. You've spent a lot of your life in and around academia, and one of the things is teaching film studies. But you're also a huge music enthusiast, and you know a great deal about music. So I wanted to chat.
Say that.
Yes, absolutely, particularly soul music. You know, in its richest sense. And I wanted to chat to you a little bit about film and music, and to get some of your choices about perhaps some of your favourite films and some of your favourite pieces of music. You recently, let's start off perhaps with music and then go into the realm of film, but you recently produced a list of your top 100 pieces of music and sent it to me. And you know, obviously I love music, I used to, and still do sing. And that's a huge undertaking. I looked at the list and I thought, wow, this is a fantastic list. What's it like for somebody to even stop and to try and compile their top 100, in this case, albums of all time? Surely it's an absurd undertaking.
In a way it's absurd, but also I think what's important is you can do it if you're honest with yourself, and you're being honest to the people that you show it to. There's the kind of list that you make that has the albums on there that people approve of, and it's like, you know, oh, that's a classic and I approve of, and I'm with you on that. And then there's the list that you compile based on what you actually love.
That's such a good point.
And what you actually love are the albums that you continually play, and the ones that you've lived with and grown up with, the ones that you've discovered maybe late in life and have become very much a part of your life, you know, in between joy, pain, passion, reflection, all sorts of things. But, you know, there are certain kinds of albums that have a very particular kind of emotional, psychological and spiritual effect on you.
Wonderful. That's a lovely place to kind of dip into some of the choices that you had. Now, I was just leaving the house, so I didn't have much time today, and I couldn't find the full list, but I happen to have one or two of the albums on your list. And for people who don't know, tell us the number one album was this one, Songs in the Key of Life, and pretty nearby was, oh no, this was not number one. Number one was, of course, and remind us, Innervisions.
Okay.
And this was close up. So tell us a little bit about these couple of albums then, perhaps.
Okay. My number one album, or on the list, there is a number one position that is shared by two albums, and it is Songs in the Key of Life, right here, and Innervisions. And to make up my mind which one is better is very difficult. To speak about which one I think shows the greatest artistry and understanding and knowledge of music is very, very difficult. So there were the two albums that positioned at number one. And
they're two very different works, aren't they? They're two very, very different. They're two different works, aren't they? They're both. I think they're both extraordinary albums. And Innervisions, I think I would probably agree. It'd probably be at my number one. And it's. I mean, Stevie Wonder is. I mean, the imagination, the artistry, the expression, the soulfulness, the social commentary, I guess, on both of these albums is really, 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 really.
Which is why
special.
they do occupy the number one position, because I think in terms of soul music, soul funk, something that's spiritual, gospel, Songs in the Key of Life has all of that. And I think that Innervisions has the kind of social commentary that is very seldom explored in soul music, except with somebody like Marvin Gaye.
Yeah, well, speaking of Marvin Gaye, I know I didn't have your top listed Marvin Gaye album, which was, of course, What's Going On.
Yeah.
This one also does feature on the list, which is quite a special album, isn't it? Hear My Dear, which he wrote when he, as his divorce settlement to his wife.
Well, you very, very seldom get an album from any kind of an artist that's actually going to honestly talk about the pain of a breakup, what it meant to be married, what you shared together, what you're leaving behind. And I think also it's to understand how you've changed, how the marriage, what the marriage gave you, and now that you're no longer together, how have you changed?
This is such a good point that you make, isn't it? Lots of albums are love, lust, or fun, or although a quick moment of real sadness or a breakup, but you don't so often get let into the whole emotional story, the backstory, and as you say, how somebody's changed and so on. So it's an exquisite album. It's subtle in many ways, isn't it? And the songs are, you know, some of the songs even don't necessarily have the shape or the structure of lots of songs as you might normally imagine them to be.
Yeah, because, you know, they're not 3-minute singles, you know, and they're, some of them are 8 minutes long, some of them are longer. And what he does, I think, in the music, is to give us an overall sense of his capacity to compose music that is soulful music, soul music, black music. You know, the boundaries get blurred because the musicality itself is universal, and it speaks to the emotional and psychological state of mind. And I think that's what makes Here My Dear such a profound album, is that he's telling you the greatest times of the marriage and what you're left with, you know, when that no longer works. And you very, very seldom get somebody, and especially a man, that actually tells you that I'm hurting still. And that's what makes this so deeply satisfying.
Yeah, and it's interesting now you were talking about that. Lots of the albums on your list, many of them are from the 60s, many of them are from the 70s and so on. One of them that's from the 80s, and it's interesting when a man who's got quite a broad range of emotions that he will discuss is Prince. And Purple Rain is a slight departure from some of the other albums that you list. What is it particularly about Purple Rain, I guess, as an album? Many people, of course, would say Prince, such an extraordinary artist. Tell me why it was that this particular album was featured on your list.
Well, this album didn't change my life, but what it did, it actually changed my understanding of the fusion of new wave, of pop music, soul music, black music, funk music. It was, I think, a beautiful synthesis of where music can be in the 1980s and what music could encompass. And because it wasn't black or white or this or that, but instead it was just something very fresh, very sharp.
I think that's such a good point, isn't it? That, you know, when great music, somehow it transcends genres, and great artists, they somehow transcend genres, and everybody, I mean, like the artists that you've mentioned before, Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye, somehow everybody feels as though they so relate to them, they're part of their own life. And Prince has something of that too, and if we think about the album Purple Rain, which is one of the most beautiful and moving rock pieces, a beautiful rock ballad, and just a beautiful emotive song from the first, when you hear that first guitar lick begin to strike up, and then you've got stuff like Let's Go Crazy. There's so much. It's this party.
I think you're also, you know, you also just tap into one of the other things that's really important about an album, is that an album should open strong, whether it's a ballad or it's an up-tempo number, and it should then move you to the center vortex. That the last track you hear on side one should be so compelling that you want to turn it over.
Yes.
You get that on Thriller.
Well, I guess what's interesting about that is that, interestingly, one of the things that I guess is really interesting is that you mentioned, I guess when we've talked about music and so on, you brought in this thought about how you would have a side A and a side B. Of course, music's completely changed, and we moved from LP,
but I haven't changed that much.
Yeah, absolutely. But how we moved from LPs, where we'd have very much that experience, side one and side A, and how things were sequenced and so on. Now it's completely changed. We by the time CDs, which would have been around the time that actually Purple Rain kind of came out, that CDs were beginning,
they were coming
to come
onto
into
the market, but I actually held out in buying CDs because I didn't like them. I still don't have any affection for them. When I bought Purple Rain and I took it out of the cover and I took it out of its gorgeous underwear, it was purple. The vinyl was purple, and I thought, yowza! It was just so great. And then you put it on and Let's Go Crazy. And when you turn it over, it opens with When Doves Cry and it closes with Purple Rain. It has everything a great album should have.
Well, and that's going to be wonderful when we come on to, and perhaps on a separate short kind of film, talking about film, because I guess one of the things that's quite interesting when we come to something like film is that how thing of course sequence is very important, and how the build up of the plot. And so it's really interesting, I guess, how artists who are making albums, when you had an A side and a B side, must be quite different to now when it's on a CD, or in fact if it's just going to be something for download. Of course there will still be the CD and perhaps other formats. I guess it's a whole different animal.
It is, because whilst I have no affection for CDs, I love DVDs. For all sorts of reasons, and so now a lot of the films that are my favourite films, they're all on DVD.
Fantastic.
And they're all the extras that go with them, the insights from the actors and the actresses.
Well, I'm looking forward to talking about that. But before we leave music and before we close, is there anything else, any other albums that you want to touch on? I want to try and be I don't want to be if in a way, I'm a huge, vocalist and so on. I'm a huge fan of.
Okay, so
tell us about this particular album, because lots of people might not know about this particular album.
Rufusized, featuring Chaka Khan, is one of those great 70s albums where the funk starts in your ass and it just moves through your body. Her voice gets a hold of you and she just doesn't let go. And it is not because she is screaming and ranting and giving it the whole diva, I'm going to do it all. She is subtle, she's beautiful, she is reflective, she manages to help you to take the journey with her, and not many people can do that because they're grandstanding. But I think what Chaka Khan does beautifully is that she understands the whole process of neons. And so the open invitation to take the journey with her through her vocal style, she invites you in, and so does Aretha, which is why Aretha Franklin's in the top 10 as well. And I think what is so exciting about Chaka Khan is that you're wondering, where will the range take you next? And that is a wonderful part of listening to her. Where will she take you next? Because you don't know. And as this album moves from track to track, and I think one of the things that's really important is that she's got a great deal of very funky white musicians behind her. And you'd swear this is just, the ultimate black funky album. But all the musicians, with a few exceptions, that range throughout the history of Rufus are predominantly white men.
And I guess one of the things that's interesting about the whole time sequence of lots of the albums that we've talked about and lots of the albums, actually, it's quite interesting, they're American kind of albums, is that set at such a rich and many ways turbulent time in terms of American history and Afro-American history, and so it's really nice that, interestingly, all of the albums that you've chosen are artists who have a very awake kind of consciousness, and so I think that's just a beautiful moment to kind of close on the bit where we're talking about music, because I guess the invitation for anybody who perhaps is going on their own musical journey as an artist or as a listener, there is an invitation through music to be thinking about your own consciousness, not just where you are in your life in terms of your relationships, but where you are also in the world. And that's what's so beautiful about all of the albums that you've picked up on. I think that they have that element.
I think what becomes evident on my list of 100 is that all the music is about inclusivity. There are a range of artists across different racial backgrounds, different backgrounds, but the music always invites you in, and that's why I love them. That's why they've stayed with me.
Yeah, and that's great. And then for those, there is on your list. As we talked about some of the, but there's a whole broad section.
Well, there's Hendrix, and there's
the Beach Boys, there's the Beatles, there's Barbra Streisand, there's REM from memory. There's a whole real. There's a Delight album,
World
Clique, and all sorts of stuff. But I just want to thank you. I'm going to pause the camera there, and then we're going to come back and talk about the thing that you've taught and that you've helped so many people who are studying film to talk about, which is the realm of film. So I'm going to leave you to smile and show perhaps some of those choice albums, and I'm going to stop the camera there for a moment.
Fine.
Thank you.